The cold mechanical voice of the airport intercom cut through the crowded halls of LAX at the exact moment a suitcase hit the polished floor with a sharp thud, like a warning from somewhere unseen. Attention, passengers. And in the middle of that chaos, Ariana Blake stopped walking. Not because she stumbled, but because every glance around her had just slid past her, as if she were a shadow, faint, insignificant, unworthy of attention. No one realized what they had just overlooked. No one knew that this seemingly ordinary woman carried the kind of power that could make the entire aviation industry tremble with a single command. But Ariana knew, and she stayed silent. That was how people with real power stepped into a story not loud, but with a presence that made the air tighten for a split second. LAX that day felt like its own sprawling city suitcase wheels, screeching across the floor, overlapping conversations, rising and falling, the smell of hot coffee blending with expensive perfume. Ariana moved through it all with steady, precise strides, as if she had calculated every inch of space ahead of her. Her cream blazer framed her strong shoulders, sharp, yet soft, the same way she balanced logic and intuition. At 42, Ariana no longer needed to rush to prove she was busy. She never needed to glance around to check who was watching. The people who truly mattered already knew exactly who she was. The rest of the world, the ones who did not look closely enough, always judged her wrong. They saw her as a generic business traveler, an unremarkable female executive, a woman of color who seemed successful, but not quite exceptional. Ariana had seen that look countless times. In boardrooms, at shareholder meetings, at lavish galas where people smiled politely, but never suspected she held 68% of the voting power at Aurora Airlines, the second largest airline in the United States. And this morning, she knew she would see that look again. Yet as always, she did not avoid it. She accepted it, stored it, and used it as fuel to go even further. Walking toward Gate 12, Ariana adjusted her breath, one long, deep inhale. Her hand brushed the strap of her minimalist leather bag, a simple design with no visible branding, because Oriana never believed power needed to be displayed. Power was in the way she entered a room and forced every plan around her to shift. Her digital ticket glowed on her phone, Aurora Airlines first-class seat 2A. She smiled faintly. Seat 2A was not random. It was the seat she always chose, a quiet window corner, orderly and discreet. The perfect place to observe, while appearing perfectly ordinary to those who loved to underestimate. The interesting part was that almost no one, except a handful of top-level executives, knew that the true owner of Aurora Airlines sometimes flew undercover as a regular passenger to evaluate the real customer experience. No announcement, no entourage. She wanted to know how Aurora treated the overlooked, not just the VIPs. And today, her instincts whispered that something was coming, something significant. Ariana reached the first-class check-in counter. The staff greeted her mechanically, typed a few lines, and handed back her documents. Everything smooth and perfect, but perfect in a cold, detached way. No one recognized her. Good. She was not seeking recognition. She was seeking truth. As she walked away, she overheard two employees whisper, "She's probably some mid-level manager." Yeah, successful enough. Ariana did not turn back. The sting of assumptions was something she had lived with her entire life. But every time it happened, she felt something sharpen inside her. Something focused a deeper hunger for change. That silence inside her, that restraint, was her power. She passed by the first-class lounge, warm lights reflecting off sparkling wine glasses. A few business travelers glanced at her not with respect, but with shallow appraisal. Who is she? What does she do? Looks decent, but not remarkable. Ariana smiled softly, the kind of smile shallow observers never knew how to interpret. Go ahead, underestimate me. It is always your first mistake. When the announcement called for first-class boarding, Ariana rose to her feet. Her steps slowed, not out of hesitation, but because she wanted to feel every movement before stepping into the cold metal jet bridge. An airplane she believed was where people showed their truest selves, patience or selfishness, courtesy or arrogance, fairness or entitlement. A closed cabin was a miniature version of society, a world small enough that people could no longer hide what they really were. She handed over her boarding pass and stepped into the first-class cabin. Soft lighting, luxurious brown leather seats, a faint hint of orange essential oil in the air. Everything exactly as it should be. Until Ariana's gaze stopped. Her seat, 2A, already occupied. A blonde woman around 45 sat comfortably scrolling through her phone, leg crossed, wearing the expression of someone who believed her authority came pre-installed. A designer handbag sat on the armrest as a silent declaration of ownership. Ariana froze for a heartbeat. Not panicked, not angry. Only that familiar quiet inside her chest, the kind that always came before the storm forming around her. She knew 3 things instantly. First, the woman in that seat absolutely believed Ariana had made a mistake. Second, the entire cabin would soon turn to look. Third, this was not a simple mix-up. This was the beginning, the trigger, the spark. And deep inside Ariana, a voice whispered, "Another person judging wrong, another person about to learn an expensive lesson." She took one more step, lifted her gaze calm and sharp as glass. The end of this opening chapter was not marked by words, but by the moment Ariana looked at seat 2A and understood that the fate of an entire airline was about to shift in the next few minutes. The moment Ariana stopped in front of seat 2. The air in the first-class cabin tightened, as if the floorboards had cracked beneath the weight of a secret. The blonde woman looked up, her pale blue eyes gliding over Ariana, with a coldness that sliced, quick and sharp, not seeking understanding but classification. And in a single second, Ariana saw the thing she knew all too well, the instinctive, unconscious prejudice, the look that said, "You must be mistaken." The woman's lips curved a neat little smile, built on surface-level power. "I believe you are standing in the wrong place." Her voice was soft, but each word dropped with the precision of dry ice. No anger, no raised tone, just a certainty in the entitlement she believed she possessed. Ariana tilted her head, slightly unhurried, as if she were opening the first door into a battle the other woman did not yet know she had started. "Seat 2A is mine." Ariana's voice was gentle, but carried weight, not the weight of force, but of truth, a truth that needed no permission to exist. Melissa Davenport, yes. That was the name on the golden luggage tag beside her suitcase, narrowed her eyes. She scanned Ariana from her hair to her shoes, her gaze moving like someone inspecting an item that did not meet display standards. "No, I requested this seat in advance. Aurora Airlines always gives it to me. You may want to check your ticket." Her words floated out lightly, but they were laced with ownership. The cabin began to stir. The man in seat 1C lifted his eyes from his newspaper. The young executive in 3A lowered one side of his headphones, Even the gentle pour of champagne at the back paused for a heartbeat. Ariana met Melissa's gaze. My ticket clearly states 2A. Her calmness made Melissa falter for a split second. She tried to smile again, but it looked like fresh paint smeared over a cracking wall. The system must be mistaken. I am a platinum member. I take this flight every month. This seat is always reserved for me. And despite Melissa being the one speaking, the person she was trying to convince was not Ariana, but everyone watching. She was attempting to build power through the crowd, Ariana thought. How clumsy. Ariana did not argue. She simply raised her phone, the boarding pass, glowing on the screen the words 2A shining with the clarity of a verdict. But just then, the sound of heels tapped softly against the floor. A flight attendant approached, smiling with eyes that were not truly smiling. Emily Park, 32, slender, her expression well-trained, though her hands tightened slightly before she spoke, betraying hesitation. Ma'am, we can arrange seat 3C for you to make sure the flight does not get delayed. Not an apology, not verification, not resolution, but a request for the person who was correct to yield to the person who was wrong. It made Ariana's heart beat slow by a fraction, not in surprise, but in confirmation. System failure, training failure, cultural failure. She had seen it in thousands of customer complaints, in internal reports, polished to hide the cracks in meetings where mid-level managers covered the floor with rehearsed explanations. But seeing it with her own eyes right in front of her still sent a cold clarity through her chest. Not pain, resolve. Melissa smiled triumphantly, resting a hand on her designer bag like the matter was settled. You see, simple fix. Ariana turned toward Emily, her gaze calm but deep enough to make Emily freeze for a moment. Why should I move when this is my seat? Emily swallowed. She glanced at Melissa, then back at Ariana. She clearly knew what she was about to say was unreasonable, yet habit pushed her forward. Because Ms. Davenport is a platinum member, and she always sits here. And what about me? Ariana asked softly. Emily opened her mouth, but another voice cut in, sharp, youthful buzzing with outrage and excitement. Guys, there is real drama happening here. Lillian Nguyen, 21, held her phone, raised just high enough, her camera pointed directly at Ariana and Melissa. Her eyes sparkled like she had found buried treasure. Live stream time. This is definitely going trending. Gazes shifted. Phones came up. A few passengers considered standing, but held back out of thin courtesy. Ariana looked around and felt the air shift, a cold breeze sweeping through the cabin. The eyes were no longer just curious. They were measuring, comparing, judging who looked more like someone who deserved the seat. Same old story, Ariana thought. Measuring worth by appearance, not by truth. Sensing the energy tilting toward her, Melissa straightened proudly and adjusted her posture. Honestly, I do not think we need to make this a big issue. She just needs to switch seats. That sentence, spoken without volume, yet carrying too far, struck Ariana like a drum, signaling the moment of change. Ariana sat straighter, breathing deeper, not to prepare for an argument, but for a revelation. A part of her wanted to end it now, with 3 simple words, I am the CEO. In seconds, everything would flip. Melissa frozen Emily, pale the live stream audience in shock. But no, Ariana didn't want a quick ending. Lessons were not sharp if delivered in a single line. A true lesson had to grow from the arrogance of the other person, from their wrong assumptions, from the bias they believed was invisible. Ariana looked directly at Melissa, her gaze not cold, but deep enough to unsettle even someone who did not know why. "I will not switch seats." 5 simple words, but their effect struck like the heavy click of a locked interrogation room door. Melissa's eyes widened. Emily stiffened. Lily lifted her phone higher, and the entire first-class cabin understood one thing with perfect clarity: the real battle had just begun. The moment Ariana said, "I will not switch seats," the air in the first-class cabin seemed to collapse inward for a single, suspended second. The soft tap of a spoon against a wine glass from seat 1D rang out sharp and final, like a full stop marking the end of artificial calm and the beginning of the storm forming beneath it. Melissa Davenport held her breath for a beat, then let out a short, sharp laugh steeped in unconscious contempt. How ridiculous. She looked at Ariana with the kind of gaze Ariana had seen her entire life, the gaze of someone convinced they stood above her, someone certain their power was unquestionable, someone who believed the person in front of them was nothing more than a minor inconvenience to be brushed aside. "Please do not make this complicated," Melissa said, her voice soft, but with arrows hidden behind every word. "This seat is not meant for you. That is the truth." Emily, the flight attendant, stood beside her, with her hands clasped in front of her body, eyes wide, with a fear that came from knowing something larger than she could manage was unfolding. Even so, she tried to maintain professionalism. "Ma'am, if you continue to refuse, I will have to inform the captain." Ariana did not respond immediately. She looked directly into Emily's eyes and saw the fear swelling beneath the surface. Fear of an angry customer, fear of being recorded, fear of social media, backlash, fear of the company's disciplinary system, a system Ariana herself had once signed off on, now watching it being misused right in front of her. Ariana was not angry at Emily. She was disappointed, and disappointment always made her quiet longer than usual. That silence spread through the cabin like a held breath. Lily Nguyen, the college student live-streaming everything, stepped forward half a pace. Her camera focused sharply on Ariana. "Guys, it is getting real now." Viewers surged like a rocket burning fuel. Ariana glanced at the lens. She saw her reflection in the screen, calm, composed, with eyes deep as storm clouds before rain. Eyes that anyone who had ever crossed her would never forget. Melissa cleared her throat like someone waiting for a ruling to fall in her favor. "I suggest the crew follow proper procedures. This seat is mine. She only needs to comply." That sentence, seemingly harmless, dropped like oil into a burning flame. Ariana turned her head, and for the first time truly looked at Melissa, not with polite social courtesy, but with a stare so deep it felt like pulling someone into a quiet and dangerous place. In that moment, Melissa felt something she could not name, something unsettling. There was something about this woman, her posture too steady, her gaze too sharp, her calm far too out of place for the situation. Melissa sensed it but could not understand it, and because she could not understand it, she felt the need to press harder to reassert her dominance. "I request that she be moved to another seat," Melissa said louder. Emily flinched. Lily raised her phone even higher. A couple of passengers whispered behind Ariana. The man in 1C murmured to his seatmate Strange, "That woman does not seem afraid at all. Maybe she is just being stubborn for fun," the other replied, though without conviction. Ariana exhaled slowly. "I have the legal right to sit in the seat I purchased." Her voice was gentle like wind, but sharp and cold as a thin blade. Anyone who wants to change that must provide a valid explanation. I am the valid explanation. Melissa snapped faster than she could think the reflexive response of someone who had been prioritized their whole life. Her words landed in the cabin like a spear of arrogance. Ariana closed her eyes for a brief moment, not out of hurt, but because she realized the situation had surpassed a simple seating dispute. It had become a raw display of the system she had spent years trying to repair. A system that still existed, still spread, still thrived in moments like this. Melissa delivered what she believed was the final blow. I fly this route all the time. I am a regular. They know me. This seat, she said, placing her hand on the armrest like marking territory, is mine. Ariana opened her eyes. No, she said softly, but clearly enough for the entire cabin to hear. This seat is mine. Emily grew more frantic, glancing around as if searching for someone to intervene. I am very sorry, but if you two cannot resolve this peacefully, I will have to call the captain down. Melissa shot to her feet immediately, a mix of indignation and confidence. Good. Call him. I want to see who gets priority, me or her. The words froze the air again. Livestream numbers spiked. Lily let out a breath. My goodness, if this does not go trending, it will be a waste. Ariana remained perfectly still, but inside her every vein felt like it was being pulled taut by threads of steel. Not pain, but concentration. The concentration of someone who knew the moment of truth was drawing near. Melissa crossed her arms, her eyes full of challenge and certainty. I want to see who you think you are to stand against me. Ariana smiled a small, nearly invisible smile that only someone standing very close could detect. Melissa did not see it. Emily did not see it. But Lily saw it through her camera, and she felt goosebumps ripple across her skin. Because it was not the smile of someone losing. It was the smile of someone already standing at the summit. A smile that signaled the game Melissa thought she was winning had never even begun. And just as Melissa opened her mouth to deliver one more line to secure her supposed victory, the distinct sound of the cabin door sliding open cut through the air long and sharp. The captain had stepped out of the cockpit. No one realized that this moment would reshape the fate of the entire flight, the entire airline, and the entire careers of everyone standing in that narrow cabin. The real confrontation had only just begun. The cabin door swung open, and Captain Michael Grant appeared like a strict line, cutting through the surrounding noise. His face, marked by the wrinkles of experience, carried the authority of someone used to being listened to instantly. But today, that authority was about to collide with something far greater, which he did not yet know. He stepped in, glanced at Ariana, then lingered longer on Melissa, and Ariana immediately understood the look. An unconscious priority, an instinctive choice, a judgment based on what he thought he knew about the world. What's going on here? The question rang out calmly, but beneath that calm was a hint of impatience. He wanted to resolve this quickly so the plane could depart on time. What he did not know was that this hasty decision would push the entire airline to the edge. Emily quickly straightened, adjusting her thin smile as if to hide her panic. Captain Passenger Davenport is seated in 2A, the seat she usually occupies. But this passenger, Emily tilted her head toward Ariana, claims this is her seat. Melissa cut in. Not claims. She's mistaken. I always sit here. The words, she fell again into the cabin like a drop of acid. A few passengers shivered. Lily lifted her phone slightly higher, filming while whispering to viewers. Everyone hear that this is intense. Captain Grant turned to Ariana. his eyes searching for compliance, a reasonable passenger, one who would yield, who would not cause more trouble. He did not see that. Instead, he saw a woman standing tall, calm her eyes, sharp but non-confrontational, a form of power that made him slightly uneasy without knowing why. "Ma'am," he said, his voice carrying the familiar authority of someone who had commanded tens of thousands of flight hours to prevent delays. "Could you move to another seat? 3C is still first class, still comfortable." Ariana did not answer immediately. She let a beat of silence fill the cabin, a pause that made Melissa more confident, Emily more anxious, and the captain increasingly frustrated. Captain Ariana spoke slowly, each syllable piercing the air like cold metal seat. 2A is the seat I purchased with my own money. I have no reason to yield it to someone who did not buy it. "It's just a small mistake," Grant replied, his tone softening, yet in his eyes flickered a hint of impatience. Ariana recognized it instantly. Not because he disliked her, but because he did not respect her, a form of invisibility women of color in positions of power had endured for years. Melissa exhaled sharply, as if this had gone on longer than she deemed acceptable. "Captain, I expect you to resolve this immediately. I am very familiar with this crew. They all know me." That seemingly simple statement rang in Ariana's ears like a warning bell. "They know me." Another way of saying I am more important than her. Emily looked at Melissa, then at Ariana. The worry in her eyes intensified. Ariana could see Emily's mind racing. What if the wrong person is prioritized? What if the live stream spreads? What if the airline gets sued? But Emily's greatest fear was not a live stream or a lawsuit. It was losing points with the VIP passenger, the tip income the attendants relied on to live. Grant sighed. "I need a quick solution. We cannot stand here forever." Emily immediately seized the opportunity. "Could you help us a little?" In that moment, an old memory surged in Ariana 10 years ago, in a boardroom being asked to be softer, be flexible, don't be rigid to yield to someone deemed more appropriate. She had stayed silent then. Today, not anymore. Ariana stepped halfway toward Melissa, not threatening, not showy, simply close enough that Melissa had to meet her gaze. "Why should I give up my seat for you?" Melissa flinched slightly, a reaction she tried to mask with a haughty raise of the eyebrows. "Because I am a platinum passenger, and you—" A pause. A glance from head to toe. A familiar misjudgment. "You don't look like someone who normally sits here." The words fell into the cabin like a heavy stone. Someone gasped. Lily whispered, "Oh my God, this is real life." Grant frowned. He was uncomfortable hearing that, but he did not object. He just wanted it over. "Moses." "Blake," he said, his voice sharper. "I will repeat. This is the final offer before I must call security." Emily shook her head lightly, as if in disbelief at how far this had gone. A passenger in 4A whispered, "Why doesn't the captain check her ticket?" But Grant had made his decision, and he made the wrong one. "You have to move." Ariana did not budge. There was a light in her eyes that made Melissa instinctively step back, a half step alight. Melissa did not understand, but her body instinctively recognized influence, power, authority, not the authority of luxury attire or a haughty voice, but silent, true power. Ariana spoke her voice, low, firm, sharp, as a blade, cutting through the fog. "I will not give up my seat, and you have no authority to ask me to leave the seat I purchased." "You are being uncooperative," Grant replied. "I will have to call security." "Call them," she said. 4 words, slow, clear. The entire first-class cabin rocked. The live-stream viewership exploded. Melissa glared. "What's wrong with you? It's just a seat." Ariana turned to her, looking her straight in the eyes. "Just a seat. Then why are you not in your own seat?" Melissa opened her mouth but could not respond. The captain raised his radio. "Security, proceed to gate A12. Passenger non-compliant." Lily screamed in excitement. "Oh my God, it's happening, it's happening." Ariana stood unmoving in the cabin, sunlight from the window casting a halo around her face. She did not need to shout. She did not need to argue. She did not need to display her identity. Her eyes spoke for her. "I have given you enough chances." And at the very moment Grant raised the radio a second time to confirm the call, the plane shivered slightly. Not from wind, but because an absolutely invisible change had begun, Ariana Blake had decided she would forgive no one in this cabin. The plane shuddered slightly, but it wasn't the engines. The tension felt like an electric current running through the cabin from first class all the way to the back. Ariana Blake stood, tall hands clasped in front of her chest, eyes steady, unmoving, while Captain Michael Grant and Melissa Davenport waited expectantly for her reaction. The cabin was so quiet that every breath, every rustle of a newspaper, every clink of a glass sounded like an alarm bell. Melissa exhaled sharply, her confident smile now melting across her face, like hot wax trying to maintain an image of authority that faded under Ariana's unwavering gaze. "You know," Melissa began, her voice trembling, but attempting composure, "I have flown this route for many years. Seat 2A has always been mine." "Just a little flexibility," Ariana interrupted, with a subtle furrow of her brow, silent yet sharp as a sword drawn from its sheath. "You are mistaken. I am the passenger who purchased this seat. No exceptions. Not today. Not here." Emily Park, the chief flight attendant, inhaled sharply, standing nearby, sensing the disorder in that moment. She knew that if Ariana spoke any louder, or even revealed a hint of a smile, everything would shift in an unpredictable direction. An unseen plot twist was approaching. Lily Nguyen camera focused on Ariana whispered to viewers, "Get ready, everyone. She isn't just standing up for the seat, she's standing up for everyone who has ever been misjudged." Every word from Lily resonated through the attentive passengers, making them realize this seat was only the beginning. Grant raised the radio. His voice, serious. "Security, prepare to enter first class. Passenger non-compliant." An invisible order was shaking. The passengers remained silent, a few inhaled sharply. Ariana did not move yet. In her eyes, the entire first-class cabin seemed under her influence, not with physical force, but through presence and intellect. Melissa felt a tightening in her throat, a strange sensation. She thought she was controlling the situation, but in reality, all the power was slipping from her grasp. Do you know who I am?" Melissa stammered, trying to hold on to her last thread of safety. Ariana's lips curved slightly, offering no direct answer. She knew Melissa was exposing herself, arrogance, fear, helplessness in accurately assessing the true power before her. Just look at the seat. Ariana thought they are mistaken. They see appearances, not real strength. A few passengers discreetly raised their phones, eyes wide, recording every expression, every glance, every breath. Lily amplified the live stream viewer comments, whirling like a storm. "She's right. Do not yield. This is not just a seat." Ariana felt the flow of public opinion forming within the cabin. It was no longer a personal incident, but a symbol. Every breath she took emphasized that there was no room for deception or prejudice. Grant drew a deep breath, trying to maintain authority. "Ms. Blake, I repeat, for the last time, we are asking you to move seats so the flight is not delayed. This is the final warning before intervention." Ariana did not budge. Her mind raced with strategies, a quick message to the office, a secret phone call from her personal device, yet none needed to be executed just yet. She was letting everyone ensnare themselves in the web they had woven. Every word from Melissa, every gesture from Grant revealed a weakness on their part. She smiled lightly. They did not know who they were facing, but they would. Ariana lifted her hand, saying nothing, simply pressing her phone lightly. Nearby passengers began to pay attention. This was not an ordinary act. A few whispered, "This is going far." And indeed it was. The cabin was trembling, and social media had already erupted. Lily's live stream reached 50,000 viewers in just a few minutes. A new hashtag formed. The first comments appeared. Hashtag Seat for Respect. Hashtag Power Shift. Ariana needed no further explanation. Everything was unfolding naturally according to her will. Melissa froze, hesitant. Her haughty smile gradually disappeared, replaced by vague confusion and worry. Emily, flustered, looked at Ariana, realizing she was standing before a true force, not anyone in first class, not the captain, not the crew, but a power hidden beneath calmness. A power everyone had misunderstood all their lives. Some passengers remained silent, while others gripped their phones, recording every detail, eyes wide in astonishment. Ariana scanned the cabin, feeling every current of energy, chaos, fear, curiosity, excitement, all directed toward her. In this moment, once again, she understood clearly it was not about the seat, not about the crew, not about social media. True power and truth always reside with those who stand firm against prejudice. She curved her lips into a smile, both gentle and icy, like light piercing through a dense fog. Melissa stepped back half a step, body tense. Grant flinched in the silence. Emily swallowed softly, unsure how to intervene. And Ariana, standing amid all of it, remained calm as if atop a mountain, looking down on a world shaking beneath her. One seat, one cabin, an entire industry all hung in this moment. The atmosphere in first class seemed suspended in time. Ariana Blake stood motionless, eyes sharp as steel, breathing evenly, yet every cell in her body pulsed with latent power. Melissa Davenport still maintained her confident posture by seat 2A, but now that smile no longer silenced the cabin. It had become a sign of fear she had yet to recognize. Ariana lifted her hand lightly, touching her phone, a subtle gesture that seemed harmless, yet was actually activating the real power hidden behind her composed exterior. In an instant, a message was sent to command to exercise operational authority over the airline, yet Ariana remained calm. No one in the cabin noticed anything. Only Emily Park, the chief flight attendant, sensed something unusual without understanding what it was. What are you doing?" Melissa stammered, her voice trembling. But Ariana did not answer. She did not need to. She allowed the moment to speak for itself. Her gaze swept the cabin, pausing on every passenger, on every phone, recording on every tense expression of the crew. Everyone realized something extraordinary was happening. Just seconds later, the sound of the cockpit radio echoed. Captain Michael Grant furrowed his brow, holding the radio, his voice a mix of surprise and restrained control. "Ground control. We need confirmation command from the highest authority. Return to the gate." First class fell into absolute silence. Passengers looked at one another, confused, sensing a force, rearranging the order. Melissa's eyes widened as she tried to reclaim authority. "This cannot be you. You're just a regular passenger." Ariana smiled lightly, not raising her voice. Not angry, just the smile of someone who knew exactly where she stood. "You are mistaken," she said, her voice deep, strong, without excess. "I am not a regular passenger. I am the CEO and controlling shareholder of this airline. This is not my seat. This is my plane." Melissa exhaled, but it was no longer a confident smile. It was shock. Emily Park turned toward Ariana, pale, feeling the weight of true power she had never witnessed before. Captain Grant was speechless. Passengers rose, phones lifted. Lily Nguyen's live stream exploded. The viewer count jumped from tens of thousands to over 200,000 in just a few minutes. People online began shouting, commenting, sharing, hashtag CEO grounds, flight, hashtag power shift, hashtag seat for respect. Melissa was completely isolated. Step by step, Ariana approached seat 2. A calm yet authority radiating with every movement. The entire cabin was engulfed in thick silence. Everyone understood a storm of power had emerged, and Ariana was its epicenter. No one could stop her. No one dared to. Ariana placed her hand on the armrest, lifting a half smile that challenged yet remained composed. "Do you wish to test me further?" Melissa trembled, flustered words choking in her throat. She had once believed seat 2. A was her weapon. Now it was merely an empty chair, powerless before a force she had never seen. Emily Park was about to speak when Ariana nudged her phone, pressing a few subtle buttons, and everyone in the cabin heard the cockpit radio. Flight 1847 directive from headquarters returned to gate. Override from CEO confirmed. Chaos erupted. Melissa froze, eyes wide, mouth agape. Passengers whispered, raised their phones. Live stream viewership surged, the tension in the air, stretched like a wire about to snap. Ariana stood, straight eyes fixed on Melissa, a slight smile conveying to the entire cabin, true power does not require shouting anger or display. It exists in calmness, in preparation, and in the ability to make others reveal their weaknesses. Seconds passed like centuries. Every passenger felt the invisible force rearranging the order. Melissa tried to regain composure, but it was too late. All disdainful gazes, all confident words, all unconscious bias collapsed in the presence of Ariana. No words were needed, no grand gestures. One truth remained: the person they had underestimated had just turned their world upside down. And in that moment, Ariana knew clearly this story would not end on this flight. It would spread across social media, across the news, across the aviation industry. Every action, every word from Melissa, every reaction from the crew had been recorded, analyzed, shared. The power Ariana embodied was not temporary. It was the strength of preparation, intelligence, and resolve. She slowed her steps, eyes sweeping the cabin, her thin smile conveying one message: no one, nothing could claim this seat but her. Ariana Blake stood in the middle of first class, calm like a mountain, yet the power she had just unleashed made everything around her tremble. She did not need to shout, did not need to argue, just a subtle press on her phone, the screen lighting up CEO command, confirmed. In the cabin, Captain Michael Grant's eyes flashed with shock. He thought he was in control, but within seconds he realized the real power standing before him in her hands, and her gaze had surpassed every rule he had ever relied upon. Emily Park stepped back, her hand tightening on her watch frame. She understood that every decision, every word spoken moment ago was meaningless before this presence. Melissa Davenport stood frozen eyes, wide mouth agape. The confident smile she had worn earlier had completely vanished, replaced by a vague, unfamiliar fear. Ariana did not speak. She did not need to. She lifted a half-smile gentle enough for anyone in the cabin to sense the challenge, the authority, and the composure that no one dared to confront. The cockpit radio crackled Captain Grant's voice, a mixture of shock and confusion. Flight 1847 directive from headquarters override from CEO confirmed. Return to the gate immediately. The cabin fell into dense silence. Passengers holding phones jumped, then scrambled to share. Lily Nguyen, a 21-year-old student livestream, exploded. Viewers surged from 200,000 to 500,000 in just a few minutes. Hashtags: Neshka CEO grounds flight. Zastor seat for respect. Zash's power shift spread like wildfire. Every passenger raised cameras, recording every expression, every glance, every tense heartbeat of Melissa and the captain. Melissa finally swallowed, shrinking back half a step. "You, who are you?" she asked, trembling, as if realizing all the power she had confidently held her entire life was merely an illusion. Ariana opened her eyes, looked directly at Melissa. Lips curved lightly, voice deep but sharp. "I am Ariana Blake, CEO and controlling shareholder of Aurora Airlines. This is not just my seat. This is my plane." The words were calm, but carried across the cabin, every passenger hearing each syllable, engraved into memory. Emily froze, eyes wide. Grant's mouth hung open, realizing the authority he had relied on was now beyond his grasp. Passengers pulled out their phones, filming live streaming, scrambling to share. Everyone recognized one thing: the underestimated, seemingly anonymous person had just overturned the order with real power. Melissa stood rigid. Her confident smile had completely disappeared, replaced by a sense of shock and helplessness. Every passenger exchanged glances, realizing Seat 2A was no longer just a seat. It had become a symbol of truth, of real power, of courage, confronting prejudice. Emily exhaled and stepped back, not daring to intervene further. Captain Grant held the radio voice, trembling. Ground control, confirming directive override from CEO. "We will return to the gate." Lily whispered to her live stream viewers, "Everyone she isn't standing up just for the seat. This is real power. The entire airline is being controlled for just a few seconds." Views skyrocketed. Comments flooded in "She's right. Do not yield. Real power doesn't need shouting." Incredible Ariana silently observed the entire cabin. She felt every movement, every glance, every heartbeat. She knew this moment would go beyond any live stream, beyond the passengers witnessing it. This was a transformative moment, a personal instant, becoming a symbol of justice and authority. Melissa trembled, stepping back, eyes searching for help from the captain and the flight attendants. But all assistance was meaningless now. No one could reverse the power Ariana had just embodied. Ariana curved her lips, a smile, both gentle and sharp enough for Melissa to understand everything she had ever assumed, as given, had just been turned upside down. The cabin remained silent, only the breaths and heartbeats of those watching. Ariana stepped forward slowly, her gaze sweeping each passenger, each live streaming phone, each crew, face her thin smile commanding. Everything had changed. No explanation was needed. Real power and justice had just manifested at seat 2A. A passenger whispered, "This isn't just a seat. This is change." Lily whispered into the camera, "Are you ready? This will go beyond this cabin." And Ariana knew in that absolute silence, she had laid the first brick for a chain of events that would shake the entire airline, the entire aviation industry, and the world's perception of power. She stood there, expression unchanged, yet in her eyes was a spark, a power everyone thought invisible, but in reality was shifting everything. Ariana Blake stood tall in the middle of first class, her eyes cold yet calculating. A single subtle gesture with her phone was enough to trigger Aurora Airlines' system to activate the CEO authority. Immediately, a directive from headquarters was transmitted. Return to the gate immediately. Override from the CEO confirmed. The radio crackled, and Captain Michael Grant's mouth fell open, the sense of control he had relied on suddenly slipping from his grasp. Emily Park, the chief flight attendant, gasped, realizing that this moment had exceeded her ability to manage. Passengers froze. Phones raised live streams, exploded viewership skyrocketing by the second. Melissa Davenport trembled, her confident smile completely gone, replaced by shock and panic. Ariana smiled faintly, without shouting, without making a scene. Only her sharp, calm gaze was enough to make Melissa feel that all the superficial power she had relied on was collapsing. Ariana knew this moment would extend beyond the cabin, beyond the airport, spreading through the entire airline. Every action, every word from Melissa and the captain had already been recorded, analyzed, and shared. The power Ariana embodied was not temporary. It was the strength of preparation, intelligence, and resolve. Melissa stood rigid hands, clutching her handbag, hesitant. Everyone around realized seat 2A was no longer just a seat. It had become a symbol of authority and justice. Emily exhaled and stepped back, unwilling to intervene. Captain Grant held the radio, his voice trembling, attempting to maintain authority, yet realizing everything was now out of his control. Ariana stepped forward, slowly, eyes sweeping the cabin, a thin, commanding smile conveying a silent message. No one, nothing could claim this seat but her. A passenger whispered, "This seat is no longer just a seat." Lillian Nguyen, live-streaming, seized the moment. "Everyone, she isn't standing up just for the seat. This is real power. The entire airline is shifting in mere seconds." Views surged. Comments flooded in. "She's right. Do not yield. Real power does not need shouting." Incredible. Ariana silently observed the flow of energy around her chaos. Fear, curiosity, excitement, all directed toward her. Melissa trembled, stepping back, eyes searching for support from the captain and the crew. But no one could now overturn the power Ariana had just displayed. She curved her lips, a smile, both soft and sharp enough for Melissa to understand everything she had once taken for granted was now reversed. The cabin was silent, only the sounds of tense breathing and racing hearts. Ariana sensed that this moment, a single individual standing against prejudice, had become a symbol of power, justice, and undeniable authority. A few passengers turned to each other, phones raised, recording every moment. One whispered, "This is not just a seat. This is a small revolution in the cabin." Lily whispered into the camera, "Are you ready? This will spread beyond this aircraft." Ariana smiled faintly. In that absolute silence, she had laid the first brick for a chain of events that would shake the entire airline, the aviation industry, and the world's perception of power. Everyone was witnessing the moment when the most underestimated person had now seized total authority. With slow, deliberate steps, Ariana approached seat 2. eyes sweeping the cabin, her thin smile conveying the message no one has the right to claim this seat but her. Every passenger felt it. This battle was not just over a seat. It was a symbol. It was justice. It was latent power that many had underestimated. A passenger whispered, "History is being recorded." And indeed, this moment would spread, and those who witnessed it, even once, would never forget Ariana Blake. The woman who overturned every prejudice with nothing but composure and true power. The moment Ariana Blake confirmed that Seat 2A was hers, the entire first-class cabin seemed to freeze. But the real power did not stop there. As she pressed a few subtle buttons on her phone, the signal from the CEO operations system was transmitted to the cockpit. Captain Michael Grant flinched, grasping the radio awkwardly, unable to believe the override command that had just appeared. Flight 1847 CEO command confirmed return to the gate immediately. Passengers in the cabin, initially curious, suddenly became witnesses to a power beyond imagination. Melissa Davenport stood rigid-lips, trembling her blue eyes wide. Everything she had relied on outward authority, platinum status familiarity with the crew, collapsed instantly. Emily Park, the chief flight attendant, stepped back, face pale, afraid to intervene. All passengers held their breath, phones raised, live streams exploding. Lily Nguyen whispered, "Are you seeing this? She isn't standing up just for the seat. This is the real CEO power manifested right before our eyes." Views surged, comments flooded in. "She's right. Do not yield unmatched. Real power does not need shouting." Ariana stood, tall hands clasped before her chest, eyes, cold but perceptive, sweeping the cabin. She did not need words. She did not need gestures. Everyone could sense the latent power in every breath she took. Every passenger, from busy executives to VIP travelers, realized this was not merely a dispute over a seat. It was a symbol, a moment where the underestimated, seemingly anonymous, had now reversed all the power in the cabin. Melissa trembled, stepping back, trying to regain authority. But now no help, no word from the captain or the crew could make any difference. Ariana curved her lips in a smile, both gentle and sharp enough for Melissa to understand everything she had once taken for granted was now completely overturned. The cabin was silent, only the tense heartbeat and breathing of those watching. Ariana stepped forward, slowly, eyes scanning each passenger, each live-streaming phone, each crew face her thin but commanding smile. Everything had changed. No explanation was needed. True power and justice had just manifested at Seat 2A. A passenger whispered, "This seat is no longer just a seat. It is power, it is justice." Lily whispered into her camera, "Are you ready? This will go beyond this cabin." Ariana sensed all the energy in the cabin, chaos, fear, curiosity, excitement, all directed at her. Everyone realized that the one they had underestimated now held complete power. Almost immediately, social media systems went into overdrive. Hashtags, CEO grounds flight. Seat for respect. Got power shift spread like wildfire. Every video, every live stream, every comment became living evidence, a public courtroom with Ariana at the center. The cabin was no longer a private space. It became a stage where power, justice, and true authority were demonstrated in front of hundreds of thousands. Captain Grant tried to regain composure, but he knew that every previous decision had become meaningless. Every action of the crew, every VIP priority, everything was overturned by a woman standing still in the cabin, eyes, unwavering, thin but sharp smile. Ariana understood clearly this moment did not only affect Melissa and the crew, it would ripple through all of Aurora Airlines, across the media, across public perception of the aviation industry. Melissa trembled, mouth agape, eyes unfocused, realizing that all the power she had once assumed as certain had vanished. Emily Park stood motionless, unsure what to do, while passengers shouted, filmed and live-streamed. No one dared confront Ariana. Her power was too clear. Yet subtle true authority does not need shouting threats or display. It lies in preparation, intelligence resolve, and the ability to make others reveal their weaknesses. A passenger whispered, "She isn't just holding the seat, she's teaching a lesson." Lily whispered, "This is a moment that will change the entire airline." Everyone is witnessing history. Ariana smiled faintly, knowing that this moment would extend beyond the cabin, beyond LAX, and trigger a domino effect no one in the cabin could anticipate. True power, true justice had just manifested at seat 2A. The plane came to a stop at the gate, but the air in the cabin was hotter than ever. Ariana Blake stood tall, seat 2A beneath her eyes, cold yet serene, like a mirror reflecting every prejudice, every bias that Melissa Davenport and the crew had ever cast upon her. They looked at her with awe and fear, realizing that all outward authority, false confidence priority tips and VIP titles had become meaningless. Ariana stepped slowly, each movement making Melissa falter. Captain Grant uneasy, Emily Park stunned, and passengers rise, phones raised, eyes wide. Every step she took was a drumbeat signaling change. She did not need to shout, did not need to scream. Calmly, she made everyone understand she was standing at the pinnacle of true power. On her phone, the CEO command had locked all flight functions from takeoff to security systems the plane had to obey her. Melissa trembled her gaze, unfocused, not understanding what was happening. All the power she had once confidently held was gone. Emily Park stood beside her, realizing that all her previous authority and instructions no longer mattered. The first-class cabin was enveloped in dense silence, only the sound of passengers' hearts beating the click of Lily Nguyen's live stream and the gasps of astonished onlookers. Ariana lifted her lips in a thin but sharp smile, eyes sweeping the cabin. She knew every glance, every action, every word had been controlled by her without their awareness. Each passenger received a clear message, the one they had underestimated. The seemingly anonymous had now reversed all power. Melissa stepped back, body tense, eyes wide, lips parting, but unable to speak. Captain Grant held the radio, his voice trembling. Ground control confirm override, CEO command. Everything had gone beyond control, and he knew the authority he had relied on had completely collapsed. Lily whispered into the camera. Everyone, she just flipped everything. Not just the seat, not just the cabin. The entire airline is shifting in mere seconds. Views exploded from 500,000 to over 1 million in an instant, comments flooding in. She's the real CEO, no one can stop her. Unmatched, Ariana silently observed the energy around her. Chaos, fear, curiosity, excitement, all directed at her. Melissa trembled, stepping back, eyes seeking support from the captain and the crew. But no one could overturn the power Ariana had just displayed. She curved her lips in a smile, both light and sharp enough for Melissa to understand everything she had once taken for granted was now reversed. The cabin was silent, only the sound of tense hearts and breaths. Ariana felt that this moment, a single individual standing against prejudice, had become a symbol of authority, justice, and undeniable power. A passenger whispered, "This is not just a seat. This is a small revolution in the cabin." Lily whispered to the camera, "Are you ready? This is going beyond this aircraft." Ariana smiled faintly. In that absolute silence, she had laid the first brick for a chain of events that would overturn the entire airline, the aviation industry, and the world's perception of power. Everyone was witnessing the moment when the most underestimated person had now seized total authority. With slow, deliberate steps, Ariana approached seat 2. eyes sweeping the cabin, her thin smile conveying the message no one had the right to claim this seat but her. Every passenger felt it. This battle was not just over a seat. It was a symbol. It was justice. It was latent power that many had underestimated. A passenger whispered, "This is history being made." And indeed this moment would spread, and those who witnessed it even once would never forget Ariana Blake, the woman who overturned every prejudice with nothing but composure and true power. The plane remained at the gate, yet the authority Ariana embodied had spread beyond the cabin. News live streams, hashtags, Korzuao grounds flight. Seat for Respect went viral. Public opinion erupted. Aurora Airlines became the center of media attention. Its stock wavered. Important contracts were put on hold. Melissa Davenport and the crew appeared small in the eyes of passengers and the world. Seat 2A was no longer just a first-class seat. It had become a symbol, the power of preparation. Intelligence, resolve, justice, standing firm against prejudice and false authority. Ariana closed her phone, placed her hand lightly on the seat, closed her eyes for a moment, exhaling as if releasing all the pressure accumulated. This was not just a personal victory. This was a moment where power, justice, and legacy began with a passenger who had been underestimated. She stepped down the cabin, one slow, deliberate step at a time, imposing, leaving Melissa Davenport, the captain, the crew, and the passengers frozen with a simple yet profound truth. Legacy is not the power you hold, but how you stand up for justice, even when everyone doubts you. The eyes watching the cameras recording the shares across social media all bore witness to this historic moment. Ariana Blake did not shout, did not boast, did not rage. She simply stood firm, composed, commanding, letting her true power speak. One seat, one cabin, one airline. The world itself, all had been transformed by the one they had underestimated. And Ariana knew this was only the beginning of a chain of change, not just for the airline, not just for the passengers, but for how the world perceives power, justice, and legacy. She stepped off the plane, left the cabin, yet the power of that moment remained intact in the space, in the hearts of those who witnessed it, and across social media, a legacy undeniable. Ariana Blake's story is not just a confrontation in first class. From an expert perspective, it is a clear illustration of how power and prejudice operate in everyday life when people rely on appearances or titles to judge it. Only takes one courageous individual standing up to force an entire flawed system to change. Moments like these do more than create an immediate impact. They set a new standard for how we perceive rights and dignity. If you believe justice needs to be seen and respected, like this video to share the story, subscribe to follow more awakening stories, and leave a short comment with the phrase, "Stand for Justice."